Hello, everybody, and welcome in to Speaking Steagles, the premier Pennsylvania pro football podcast. I'm Nick Vete, joined by Ricardo Martinez-Paz. We are back again. Another episode here as the Eagles continue to make their run to the Super Bowl, beating the Commanders. Second time in 2 years, or second time in 3 years, I should say, that the Eagles are in the Super Bowl, and we have a podcast episode gearing up for the big game. So exciting time, man. Eagles getting the win over the Commanders to put themselves back in the Super Bowl. But before we jump into any of it, I ask you, how you doing today, man?
Oh, I am good, man. Generally speaking, I'm good. It's well, here we are. I mean, it's been a bit since it's only been like a year, like 2 years since the Eagles were last in the Super Bowl, the rematch. I'm just initial thing, a little nervous. Trying not to think about it too hard right now, but obviously we're gonna get into that. But how are you doing, man?
I'm good, bro. I'm good. It's been a fun kind of ride to the playoffs. I think this NFL season has been pretty sweet overall, just in terms of the storylines and everything. And it's one of those things where I feel like people talk about the different matchups that they wanted to see out of the four teams in the conference championship. And even before then, no one really wanted to see an Eagles Chiefs rematch. But obviously outside of us, you obviously a diehard Eagles fan, and me sort of rooting for them as like a secondary team. But I feel like now that it's here, having this matchup, and we'll dive into this more a little bit later in the episode, but it's exciting, man. The Chiefs on the verge of doing something that's never been done, and the Eagles on the verge of, getting redemption after that loss 2 years ago that kind of started this Chiefs, stretch of dominance. Obviously before then, the Chiefs the dynasty goes longer than that, but the start of this three-peat, Eagles having a chance to get redemption on it. So, yeah, man, exciting stuff. And I think there's no better place to start than kind of talking a little bit about how the team got here, and that was with this victory over the Commanders in the NFC Conference Championship game. Just pure dominance, honestly, and definitely more high scoring than either of us predicted or thought was going to happen. And ultimately, I mean, I'll get into my 2 cents of why I think it ended up being such a blowout, but I guess we'll start with you, man. Just sort of like one or two of your general takeaways of, how this game kind of became so lopsided for the Eagles and ultimately led them to really a laugher to get into the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of said it best. It was just pure dominance all around. I think this was the most complete game the Eagles had all season. I mean, the running game, well, as you expected with Saquon, really was pushing the team forward, and then the play action building off of that, and on top of that, you had the defense forcing some turnovers, and it was just really just complimentary football all around. And I mean, I kind of have to start it with Saquon after literally the first play from scrimmage, a 60-yard touchdown. Like that is a tone setter right there. That to me, my comparison is like Kyle Schwarber leadoff home run, the first pitch. Like that's literally what that was. Setting the tone early, and was pretty much a sign of what was to come. Just pure dominance, pure, I mean, great execution across the board. So, yeah, domination. To say it was dominant is an understatement. That's I mean, 55 points against the Commanders. I mean, the defense obviously wasn't great. The Commanders I'm talking about, but still, the Eagles did what they had to do, and then and then some. So they showed why they deserve to be in the Super Bowl. Just all around was incredible.
Yeah, man, it was kind of wild, and I feel like they really capitalized on a lot of opportunities. I believe the Commanders had 2 turnovers in the first half too, which to me, I feel like just the way that the first half unfolded, and like specifically, I feel like the second quarter was so pivotal because I rewatched the highlights a little bit earlier today before we hopped on here, and like just some of the sequencing of like that big 4th down conversion where Jalen Hurts hit AJ Brown on the deep pass down the left sideline, followed up by the deep throw to Devontae Adams where the pass interference was called that led to their second touchdown. Or I don't remember if it was the second touchdown or the third touchdown, but ended up giving them, an 8-point lead at that point. And then following that up with the turnover on the, I believe it was the kick return by the Commanders that
Yeah.
the Eagles recovered. All of that was huge just to kind of really sort of like suck any momentum the Commanders had at all at that point. Like everything was leaning Eagles going into halftime. And then really they just came out and sort of dominated in the second half. And ultimately the Commanders finished up with 4 turnovers.
Yeah, I mean the turning point you mentioned it basically was the going for it on fourth down, 4th and 5. That is really what started it all, and this momentum that the Eagles carried into the second half. And those were all huge plays that, like you said, shifted momentum. And then the second half, the Commanders were kind of making a little bit of a comeback, and then another timely turnover. Oren Burks forced Austin Eckler to fumble, and then the Eagles went on to score. It was another Saquon touchdown. You could argue even though at that point the Commanders were on life support, like the 4th and 5, they had to go for it late in the third quarter. Nolan Smith, that sack to pretty much seal the game and put it out of reach. I mean, it was just again, those turnovers proved very costly for the Commanders, but the Eagles, you got to give them credit for, taking advantage and taking those opportunities and punishing them. I mean, I think it was 28 points off of those turnovers alone. And we're not even talking about Quinion Mitchell's kind of late interception, which is also cool. But it's just the defense got the takeaways, forced the turnovers. The Eagles capitalized and scored touchdowns, not field goals, touchdowns. And that's ultimately what put this game out of reach. So all around, it was just, man, all those moments just made this game one-sided.
Yeah, I don't know if you might have just mentioned it there, but also just the simple fact of like the Eagles being 7 for 7 in the red zone in this game is also kind of nuts. Just like every time that they were, down there, they were converting and not really coming up, short in any situation. So definitely kind of huge. And I guess at this point, I'll sort of ask too, because I feel like, underrated part of this, obviously there is the turnovers, but the defense still has felt so suffocating. And this was the game where it was like, all right, like the Commanders were red hot. I came into the game saying Jaden Daniels was playing the best out of any of the 4 quarterbacks remaining in the playoffs at that point. And again, just a clinic of just shutting down the opposing offense, where it's like they've just done it time and time again. And like, I don't want to get too much into previewing of the Super Bowl, but just like this defense, man, is playing on another level. And I don't know if there's anybody that's really going to be able to get much going against them at this point.
Yeah, I mean, they're just so well coached. It's just their tackling. They're so good at the pursuit. Everyone's going to the football. They're just very disciplined. They don't get fooled very easily. They don't like blow coverages. Their communication is great on the back end. Just front to back, it's just everyone knows what they're doing. And then really that's a huge part. And, to Vic Fangio, credit to him and all the DB coaches, all those defensive coaches. And obviously the players deserve a lot of credit for going out and executing really the entire season.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I feel like the one other big storyline that has to kind of be talked about a little bit with this game, man, is like, and I kind of teased this a little bit in the thumbnail that I put out there on our Instagram and everything, but like, it feels like the Eagles just put together their best game of the season, like in the conference championship game. And like one of the things that was big coming into it was like, all right, like, yes, the offense is leaning on Saquon Barkley in the run game, but like what's going to happen here if you have to turn to Jalen Hurts and, compete kind of like in a little bit of a shootout with the Commanders. I mean, ultimately it didn't end up having to be a shootout competition because the Eagles ran away with it, but Jalen Hurts throwing for over 250 yards, rushing for a touchdown, throwing for a touchdown. It's this was a game where it's like, how much optimism does this give you at this point, seeing Jalen Hurts? I think he even joked about it that like Kellen Moore finally let the leash off him a little bit. How much optimism does this give you to know that, hey, like this still is like a tool in the toolbox?
Yeah, it definitely has me more optimistic now, because I said going into that game, I was like, I felt like the playbook wasn't fully like kind of opened up to Jalen Hurts. And the quote you're mentioning that he said that he was kind of let out of the straitjacket a little bit. I was like, he kind of was. Yeah. Like he felt I mean, he was just more decisive too. It was just like,
Yeah.
and also just hearing all the criticism obviously is a huge motivating factor for him. It's like he hears this stuff. And I mean, he might not be like vocal about it, but like he uses that to that's I feel like when he plays best. I think someone said that today, one of the Eagles players. I think it was Lane Johnson, but yeah, like all those doubters, all those critics kind of fueled into that kind of performance. And yeah, like you said, that was their best performance so far this season, and they're playing their best. Yeah, and that overall, yeah, it does have me more optimistic in taking down the Chiefs.
Yeah, I feel like part of it too is like you hit the nail on the head there with like when Jalen Hurts is at his best, he's quick with his decisions. He's not spending a lot of time kind of questioning where to go with the football. And I think that what you really like the perfect sequence that put that on display was in the first half when they had that 4th and 5 and like he hit AJ Brown down the sideline. I mean, I remember watching that play and being like, whoa, that's like the Jalen Hurts, like when he's at his best, we're used to seeing. That was a throw that like almost looked routine when he's at his best. So like seeing him hit that again was like, wow, that's pretty amazing. Then on the play when he hit Devontae Adams in the end zone on the pass interference, the fact that the blitz came at him, rolled out to his right, and without really second guessing it, put the ball up there for the receiver to go and make a play on, which, Devontae Smith almost did, ultimately drew the penalty. Like that's that quick decision making. I feel like he hit Dallas Goedert over the middle a couple times, just with kind of these quick decisions that I don't know, man. That's like the fact when you've got Saquon Barkley going over 100 yards for 3 touchdowns, and yet you've still got, Jalen Hurts able to, do what he ultimately did in this game and, really kind of have the ability to air it out too. I mean, obviously the turnovers are a huge factor, winning that battle, but, seeing that come from your quarterback is pretty huge.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, it's very encouraging to see, and it also just makes the offense so much harder to stop. It's not just like, oh, we can blitz him, he's gonna get rid of the ball, it'll be incomplete or whatever. Like, no, it's like even if you blitz him, I feel like now, especially going up against Spagnuolo again for the 3rd time in however many years, I mean, he's just gonna be quick and decisive. Like I think he just in that game specifically, I guess, and he's shown it multiple instances over the course of the season, his career. He just when he knows where to get the ball, and it's just so hard to stop this offense when he's at that level, when he's clicking, everything's just kind of going. When he's just locked in, man, it's just hard to stop them.
Yeah, it's awesome, man. It felt to me like that game was everything with the offense kind of coming together. And I mean, look, the Commanders don't have the best defense in the NFL, but like they were playing good ball going into that game. And it's also like Marshawn Lattimore was back healthy. Like it definitely wasn't a pushover in terms of going up against that defense, and the Eagles really just kind of dominated from start to finish. So I don't know if you have anything else you want to add to this game from this I guess, run and game and everything. I mean, I don't know if there's anything you do want to just kind of touch on before we kind of transition.
I'll just mention a few like little records or like milestones, I guess, briefly. So this is the most 55 points was the most put up in a championship game ever, which is crazy. Surpassed the 49 points the Panthers put up in 2015 against the Cardinals. Nick Sirianni is the only head coach in franchise history to reach 2 Super Bowls, which, I mean, you think about the entire existence of the Eagles, that's kind of crazy to think about. And he's done it in 4 years now. And I think he's one of 6 head coaches to take his franchise to his 2 Super Bowls in the first 4 years within taking over the team. Again, just more credit, kind of shutting up the doubters, the critics a little bit there. But
how many coaches have done that? 2 Super Bowls in the first 4 years?
I believe it's 6.
So I wonder if Tomlin's one of those, because you have the 2009 one.
Tomlin is one of them. Yeah.
Tomlin is one of them. Yeah, because he also had that Super Bowl against the Packers too.
Yeah. So it's pretty good history. They're pretty good. I mean, Belichick, I think, is in there somewhere. A lot of these big names will soon be Hall of Fame coaches. I mean, that's pretty good company. But yeah, those are just some of the things I wanted to highlight. This is pretty significant.
Definitely. And I mean, I think kind of where we left talking about Jalen Hurts too is kind of the perfect spot to transition into here in sort of like an abbreviated stock up, stock down. I mean, obviously, I think Jalen Hurts is one of the big ones from that we kind of touched on. But if anyone else do you feel also was kind of deserving of a stock up or a stock down?
I want to give a fun one to Will Shipley. I don't know if I can even give a stock down, to be honest, but Will Shipley, I mean, the
You
game
don't
he had,
have to.
I was gonna say there's just I feel like there's nothing negative about that game, except for maybe one or two drives defensively. But Will Shipley, the backup running back, rookie out of Clemson, he was the one who forced that fumble in late in the right before the half ended, and then he also had that big 40-yard return early on in the game. Then he had that long run and kind of garbage time, and then he scored his first rushing touchdown of his career, which was cool to see. But yeah, overall, it was fun to see that. Like I had to throw him in because it was awesome to see him, have that kind of game and score his first touchdown. Like that's it. And Saquon was one of the first players to go there and celebrate, and he's like making sure he holds onto the ball, not like AJ or whatever. But no, that was cool. I have to throw him in there.
Yeah, and I mean, like, what a game to have like the best game of your career of your rookie season in the conference championship game. I think that's what's kind of incredible about what the Eagles have done this year is like, yes, like Saquon Barkley's the storyline, but like there are a lot of players on this offense that have, contributed. And just like I feel like the sign of a good team is when you can have a guy under the radar like Will Shipley just kind of out of nowhere be a big contributor. And obviously, a big part of that was his contributions on special teams, but I think he also rushed for like 60 yards on top of that touchdown too. So pretty impressive game for him for sure.
Yeah, and then the other one, I'll flip over to the defensive side. Quinyon Mitchell, he only allowed 2 catches, and he had the interception, and he did like the Terry McLaurin celebration after he got the interception. I was just Quinyon Mitchell, man, so good. He doesn't seem like he's a rookie. He's just been playing lights out all season long, and for him to get kind of revenge against Terry McLaurin after he got kind of torched in that second game during the regular season, I thought it was pretty cool, and getting an interception just made it that much sweeter on top of winning and all that. It was just shut down, lockdown corner, man.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, he's been having a great year as a defensive rookie for the Eagles. I mean, and that's part of what's been so special about this Eagles season, man, is like the fact that they do have a lot of young players on this defense, and it's still continued to be so dominant and really been like, along with Saquon Barkley, the just fuel and engine of this team. So, yeah, man. I mean, I feel like AJ Brown also deserves a little bit of love because he's gotten a lot of criticism in these playoffs. I mean, it's the type of thing where like it's easy for the national media or the outside media to kind of like criticize him and just kind of get on him for not putting up the numbers in the playoffs. But like people who follow the Eagles closely throughout the whole season and like have paid attention to his career since he's been with the Eagles has known that like he's a big part of this offense. And just with a couple of down games, even if it's in the playoffs, like that was always in there. And it was more so just like not happening because of the simple fact that the Eagles didn't really need to have big contributions from him in the first couple of games of the playoffs because of how effectively they were running the football.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. It was definitely a bounce back too because he had 2 quiet games. The Rams, the Packers. He only had 1 catch the first game, and then was it one also in the Rams? It might have been.
I believe so.
Game. Yeah, so to have this kind of performance, kind of bounce back. I mean, you figured that he was going to have this kind of game after having the 2 bad ones, but yeah, definitely a great response. And yeah, AJ, I mean, his presence on the field, the things he does, just he definitely deserves his flowers too. He had 96 receiving yards and that toe drag touchdown too. Like he's just a beast, man. Just bullied Marshawn Lattimore the entire game.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And what was really a really intriguing matchup going into that game between those two. I mean, he certainly got the better of him, and yeah, man. So I don't know. If you want, we could just skip stock down. If you have nothing to add, I'm totally cool with it if there's nothing to it at this point.
Stock down. Yeah, I feel like I don't have one, honestly. After that, no, I can't give one.
Yeah, no bad juju on that one. We'll leave it with no stock downs right now. And I guess, you kind of mentioned the Rams there on the Eagles' sort of path to the playoffs and path to the Commanders and now ultimately the Chiefs. And I guess just to like touch on the Rams a little bit, because the only Steelers talk we'll kind of have here is with speculation on the wide receiver market. Obviously, a big talking point for the Steelers is how they're going to improve that room around George Pickens. And with the Rams, I just think it's interesting, man, like how quickly things move in the NFL, where just a couple weeks ago, Rams are a couple plays away from beating the Eagles. Honestly, Jalen Carter, just pure domination up the middle sack to get to Matthew Stafford. Had that play, had they had Jalen Carter contained on that play and, Stafford hits a wide receiver for a touchdown there, they ultimately punch it in. I mean, we're talking about them potentially being in a conference championship game, potentially making a run to a Super Bowl. And all of a sudden now you look a few weeks past that and we're talking about Cooper Kupp now, Rams, pretty definitively looking to trade him this year. There was rumors swirling for a little bit about the future of Matthew Stafford. Just kind of questions all around with this organization who, was just honestly a player or two away from potentially being in another conference championship game, man. But it's certainly interesting now that the Rams, I guess, have pretty much made it, apparent that they are ready to deal Cooper Kupp. And of course, the speculation goes to the Steelers as to whether that seems to be a fit. This was something that we talked about a little bit in season when there was kind of rumblings of Cooper Kupp being on the trade market, trade block. Ultimately, Steelers, went with Mike Williams when the Rams decided to keep him at that point. But, now it sort of resurfaces and the question again becomes, is he a fit for the Steelers? And does, what does it potentially cost to get him? That's what I think is the more intriguing question, because I think I even talked about this in the midseason podcast. Like, it wasn't realistic for the Steelers to go out and get him because I just didn't think the Rams were going to trade him. But I do think he's a fit for this room. I think he brings a veteran presence. He's, been a wide receiver one in his career. Yes, there's injury history there, but when healthy, he's still capable of being a top 15, if not top 10 wide receiver in this league. That I think that complement along with George Pickens and the veteran presence that he would just bring, I think would be, a really valuable asset in the locker room. So I personally would be in favor of it.
Oh, I would too, especially on the, how we've talked about George Pickens a lot this season and, more often than not about some of his antics and all those things off the field or maybe during the game, but just the presence, like you said, of Cooper Kupp. And, he's one of those guys that'll do the dirty work. He'll do all the run blocking. He really just gets up in there and then is physical at the line of scrimmage. Like, he does everything you want a receiver to do. And that, that could potentially rub off on George Pickens. But, generally speaking, I think that would be a great fit in Pittsburgh. It's just, like you said, what would it take? How much would you have to give up to acquire him? But and on top of that, you still have the money situation, which could probably be restructured. But it's definitely something that I could see happening. I think that the Steelers still have the window open, even with all the quarterback, decisions they have to make. Why not give whoever's the next quarterback another target, a veteran guy in that receiver room?
Yeah, I mean, I think the fit makes sense just in terms of what's there. I mean, I think it's without a doubt the type of thing like the Steelers are going to address this position to some degree. If it's not going out and getting, a true second weapon along with George Pickens, I think it's definitely a first or second round draft pick. This team is investing in that position. And I think then it just comes down to like, what is the team willing to give up for him? And I don't know. 31 years old, Cooper Kupp, a little bit injury prone. Like, I definitely don't think he's worth, a first round pick. I don't even know if it comes down to a second round pick, but, that's kind of where I'd start to be like, okay with, looking into what it costs to ultimately give him up. Honestly, I don't have any sort of trades off the top of my mind that, are comparable that, come to be an idea of what it would potentially take to get a guy like him. But, that would kind of be the area where I'd be okay, where it's like, hey, when you look about what a second round draft pick could potentially be worth, I mean, that's something that I'd be willing to look in to give up for, Cooper Kupp.
Yeah. I mean, I would say probably a third rounder. Like that to me
Yeah.
feels more accurate, but like if you're gonna give up a second, the Rams might also throw in a fourth or something like that because that is a hefty contract that the Steelers would kind of have to take on
Yeah.
too. So
Yeah.
just kind of
And
factor that in a little bit.
that's why it also makes sense. I mean, the fact that the Steelers have some flex some flexibility with the cap, excuse me, and also, don't have a marquee quarterback under contract with one of those big quarterback deals. I mean, it gives them some flexibility where they can kind of take on a lot of that contract. And if the draft picks can work out the right way, I mean, I definitely think it's a destination that's going to be talked about. And it's just interesting to me the way that these deals are kind of coming about in the NFL now, where it's like, I don't understand why it makes sense for the Rams to make it so well known that they're dishing Cooper Kupp. I mean, if
Yeah,
anything, it's just like it hurts their leverage a little bit. Like, yes,
exactly.
obviously
Yeah,
teams are going to know they're trying to dump a lot of their, like, the salary that goes along with Kupp, but it's like it feels like they're just giving away a lot of just the sort of like I leverage is the only word that I can really describe
yeah,
it of just making it known like we cannot go into next season with this guy and this contract on our books. It really decreases the return that they could potentially get for him.
yeah. I thought the same thing. I was like, you could have kind of kept this a little more under wraps and maybe kind of call around, see it. You didn't have to like announce it necessarily. And it's really weird. You did definitely lose some leverage. Just kind of putting it out there that hey, yeah, we're trying to get rid of him. But yeah, it's strange how GMs and owners kind of go about these situations. But not to cross sports here, but Luka Doncic trade, that that
It's
was
relevant,
very under
man.
wraps. But yeah, that that's the total opposite of this situation. But
Yeah.
you get what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and it's interesting though to compare that a little bit because that Luka Doncic trade was kept completely quiet, no
Yep.
rumblings about it, and yet still the return that the Mavericks got was like next to nothing for a guy, not even in the prime of his career yet, who's already a top, 5 player in the NBA.
Yep.
So it's interesting the way all these things kind of work out and what goes on behind closed doors that we also don't know about. But the
Yeah.
Cooper Cup situation is definitely one we'll keep an eye on, just in general, as also following just the Steelers, quest to improve the wide receiver room and ultimately the roster as a whole. But now about 28 minutes into the podcast, I'd say it's time we turn our attention towards previewing the Super Bowl, man. Rematch of the Chiefs and the Eagles, the matchup that we had 2 years ago. Both of these teams back in a little bit of deja vu, man. I mean, we
Yeah.
were talking a little bit about this on the last episode of just, we were watching together when it was the Super Bowl 2 years ago. And now here we are, fast forward 2 years later, Eagles back trying to get that, elusive first championship of Jalen Hurts' career as an Eagle, Saquon Barkley going for his first ring, A.J. Brown still without a ring. And at the same time, on the flip side, the Chiefs looking to really do something that's never been done before. So, like I said at the open, man, I think this is an exciting matchup for those reasons. You've got history on the line in one side. You've got, an Eagles team looking to kind of cement this generation of players and talent. Nick Sirianni really cementing his legacy, honestly, with the Eagles. There's a lot on the line for both of these teams, man. And I guess I'll just leave the floor open with you for where you want to start with kind of previewing this thing, as I just gave kind of a broad overview.
Yeah. Like I said at the beginning, I'm nervous just thinking about it, but this to me is like a David versus Goliath sort of thing. It's just you're taking it also reminds me of the kind of the Super Bowl the Eagles won against Tom Brady. It was just like that was also kind of a David versus Goliath. Nick Foles against Tom Brady. It was just like the Tom
I don't
Brady
know,
versus
dude. I'll be honest. I don't know if I see it that way. You're talking about the Eagles as
really.
David.
Yeah, no, sorry. The Eagles is David. Yeah, in the sense that Nick Foles was kind of like the guy.
Yeah.
Like he was David basically. He was the backup quarterback, like against the greatest of all time. Like that's how I saw it then. And
That I agree with you on the Nick Foles Super Bowl against the Patriots, but like this one, man, I don't know if I see it as David versus Goliath. I mean, like, yes, in terms of like the Chiefs and like this dynasty run that they've been on is really incredible. I mean, they're definitely trying to slay the dragon, but I don't think it's David trying to slay Goliath. I think it's more like I don't know, an army of just Saquon Barkley and all these offensive linemen that are like these this big massive like knights in shining armor coming to try and take down this monster Goliath dragon in the Chiefs. I don't know if I see the Eagles as the David here, just with how good their defense has been and how good the running attack has been.
I was gonna say, in terms of maybe a dynasty, you're trying to take a dynasty down, but maybe that wasn't quite the best comparison. But either way, it's like you're going up against the guy who might be the greatest of all time. When it's all said and done. I don't know how they keep doing it, man. They just keep getting here. They've kept winning games, even if they're one score. I mean, it's just, to me, just the initial thoughts of it. It's just, I don't want to relive this whole thing again. And at the end of it, be like, we were right there. We were so close. I don't want to feel that again, but we're only 4 days away now. But each day for me is going to get more nervous, but I would say this team is probably better than the 2022 version, and the Chiefs are probably slightly worse, at least defensively they are, than that 2020 version as well. So I think there's a really good chance. I'm hopeful. Normally I'm not, especially in these kinds of situations when it comes to Super Bowls. I guess we'll start off with the simple fact of Mahomes is going to move the ball. Let's just I'm going to throw that out there. They're going to move the ball one way or another. And so the way I see it is the Eagles are going to have to bend but not break, kind of like what the Steelers have done for many years. And it's kind of the formula they've done for a while now. And I think this is going to have to be like that, because one of those things I'm going to throw out, Vic Fangio has never beaten Patrick Mahomes. He's 0-8. I hate that stat, but it's just true. It just, like, for some reason, Mahomes has gotten the better of him, whether he's defensive coordinator or he's the head coach. Either way, Vic Fangio's never beaten him. But this is probably the best defense Fangio's ever had, the best group of players Fangio's ever had. And I just think that this defense is built to stop this kind of, quick passing game, all these misdirections, which is what Andy Reid loves to do. This defense is very disciplined. It's really just a matter of kind of doing what you've been doing all season and playing sound football, tackling, rallying to the football, doing all those things I've been saying, and that Vic Fangio has harped on all season long and really since he was hired. It's just going to take a lot of discipline. And I mean, they have weapons. I think Xavier Worthy might be an X factor in this game because his speed is just game breaking. That's something that worries me a little bit, but it's just as long as you can, keep laying it, pass rush integrity, kind of setting the edge, kind of limiting Mahomes' scrambling, and obviously the biggest target is Travis Kelce. If you can limit him too, I think there's a good chance you can win this game. I just think this team, because they're so young and athletic, I think they're better built to kind of go up against this defense than the defense of 2 years ago. So I'll start off with that. Yeah, just bend, don't break. They're going to move it, but just don't break when it comes to the red zone.
It is interesting, and I mean, that's a lot of what the Eagles did early in the game against the Commanders too, where it was like, all right, they drove a little bit on them, but like ultimately kept them from punching it in, which really kind of kept the momentum a lot of the game with the Eagles, which I think was pretty big at that point. And I think you hit on a big thing there too, like with Vic Fangio. Like, I didn't know that he was 0-8 against Patrick Mahomes. I didn't know that was what the stat was in his all-time as head coach and defensive coordinator going up against him. But this Eagles defense is special, man. And I feel like one of the matchups that's also going to be key. I mean, you talked about keeping Mahomes kind of in the pocket a little bit, which is going to be huge with setting the edge. But, I'm not saying anything crazy here by saying Jalen Carter is going to be a huge factor in this game, but it's going to be really interesting to me seeing him up against Creed Humphrey, one of the best centers in the league, watching that matchup, because Jalen Carter has been so key in this entire season and playoff run and disrupting from up the middle that could end up being a huge factor in this game, as like Creed Humphrey versus Jalen Carter, who ultimately gets the better of the other there.
Yeah, I mean, you can even throw in Milton Williams on that front too, and Jordan Davis too, because they have their backup left guard, and because they pushed Joe Tooney out to left tackle. So I'm blanking on his name, but against the Bills, he allowed, I think it was 6 pressures. It was a team high in that game. So even though Jalen Carter is probably going to get double teamed most of the time, one of those other guys, whether it be Milton Williams or Jordan Davis or Moro Ajomo, like one of them has to take advantage of most likely a one-on-one with the backup guard. Like that's going to be huge and really getting Patrick Mahomes off his spot. But it's definitely, that's a huge matchup in the trenches for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's going to be huge without a doubt. And it's just going to be interesting to see the version of what the Chiefs kind of do here. I mean, it's interesting. Patrick Mahomes, I actually heard him asked this at the in the Super Bowl media week and everything, in terms of just going up against Fangio and how Fangio is being the smart coach that he is. I mean, you can never anticipate seeing that much similar of a version in terms of scheme and going up against him. He's gonna have different wrinkles in there, and it's gonna be interesting to see how that sort of disrupts Mahomes and this Chiefs offense. And I mean, it's a type of thing, man, where it's the bend but don't break works, to a degree to keep the game close. But to me, what it's really going to come down to is in those moments when, the pressure's the highest, the lights are shining the brightest, you're in the fourth quarter, and this Chiefs team that's always expected to win, they become accustomed to winning. That is the standard. That's the expectation. How do you stop them from making that big play? They did it against the Bills, scoring late in that game, going down the field and getting the score to take the lead. How do you prevent them from doing that in this game is, to me, what's going to ultimately be the question. I think it's going to be an incredibly close game throughout.
Oh yeah, I'm totally with you there. Although I will say the one thing I feel like is in the Eagles' favor is just the number of takeaways they've generated, specifically the number of fumbles they forced. I mean, Zach Bond, the peanut punches he's had. I mean, you can name a bunch of players throughout the season and definitely in this postseason that have caused a turnover. I think this defense, if they can get a fumble or two, or just any turnover, that'll go a long way, because in the first Super Bowl that didn't happen. Mahomes, I mean, pretty much lit them up in the second half. They did get some stops in the first half, but then they fell apart when it was the last 30 minutes. So I just think this defense is, if they don't, I mean, it's going to be hard to sack Mahomes. He's just one of those guys that knows how to get out of pressure. But when it comes to the ball being in someone else's hands, I think there will be opportunity to potentially force a fumble, maybe fall on top of it, something like that. That'll go a long way. But I do agree with you that it is probably going to come down to that last drive, or, the fourth quarter, that decisive drive. And we've seen at times the Eagles defense has faltered, although the Rams game was the exception. So that does really make me nervous that it's going to come down to that. And I think everyone at that point would be like, well, we know what's going to happen, but it's in Mahomes' hand and he has to go deliver a game-winning drive. But I don't know. I think this defense can find a way to make a stop in the end if it comes down to it.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a good X factor you brought up in terms of turning turnovers. I think except for this past game with the Chiefs and the Bills, where the Bills had no turnovers and the Chiefs had one. I mean, that's been a huge storyline of this playoffs, is that every team that's won the turnover battle outside of that one game has won the game overall. So the turnover battle is going to be fascinating. I mean, you can't give the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes extra possessions, and being able to kind of capitalize on when the Eagles do potentially get a turnover is going to be huge. So, that's a great X factor that you kind of brought up on the defensive side of the ball. And I mean, I guess when you're looking at the Eagles offense now, kind of switching sides of the fields a little bit, going up against the Chiefs defense. Obviously the big storyline is Saquon Barkley and this rushing attack that's really led the charge. But what do you kind of have your eyes on this side of the ball?
So you're obviously going to have to rely on Saquon, but it doesn't have to be all Saquon. If anything, the Chiefs are better defending the run, or I believe they're better defending the run than the pass. But I just this offense is very talented, and the thing that they're going to have to handle is the blitz, because that's what Spagnuolo loves. That's his bread and butter. I would expect all kinds of exotic looks and corner blitzes, safety blitzing, really, and anything you could throw at Jalen Hurts, because he wasn't terrible this season, but he definitely could have been better against the blitz. But I'm pretty certain that Kellen Moore and Nick Sirianni are going to have installed a lot of plays that to kind of counter that, maybe run a few more quick passes, like quick slants. They're not really a screen team, but it wouldn't hurt them to do that. Maybe some even jet sweeps like we saw against the Commanders with Dallas Goedert, like little wrinkles like that that'll slow down, potential blitzes and kind of keep the defense honest. But overall, if you can have a performance like the one you had against the Commanders, sort of complementing, run game and pass kind of working off each other, then this is going to be really hard for the Chiefs to stop. And the other thing is, the Chiefs, they can load the box all they want. They've got A.J. Brown, they got Devontae Smith, they got Dallas Goedert. The Chiefs are one of the worst defenses against tight ends. So if you leave those guys one-on-one, like, good luck. Like, Jalen Hurts can just check out of a play and let him go one-on-one for a big gain. So it's such I love the chess match. I love how fascinating that is to see how it works out there. But I think this offense is better than the defense. Just overall, I think this team has more talent than the Chiefs. It's just when it comes down to fourth quarter, like you said, that's when it matters most. So
yeah. Yeah, man. I mean, I feel like that's one of the big things that like you really can't quantify is just that been there, done that factor that the Chiefs had that I feel like has really propelled them through this playoff run. Especially with where they were. A lot of people were doubting them, like, towards the end of the season. I think Rex Ryan was on Get Up saying like this team was, like destined for a first round exit, and just time after time, like they were like in a close matchup against the Texans. They were in this close matchup against the Bills. And it's just like having that confidence and that swagger of like, we've done this before. We've done this the past 2 years. Like, we're going to get it done again. I think it's something that's so huge. And like the Eagles kind of need to prove a little bit that like they can kind of carry that same mindset of like, hey, we're going to get the job done when the pressure is kind of ratcheted up the highest. And, I guess the other thing I'll just say here too, and it's like, maybe this isn't as much of a factor at this point, but like, honestly, this entire Chiefs dynasty going all the way back to when Patrick Mahomes kind of first, sort of burst onto the scene and, started playing incredibly, was always like, well, what team can really run the football effectively against the Chiefs, sort of control the possession a little bit, keep the ball out of their hands, and like, then also have your defense sort of rested and ready to go for those bend but don't break scenarios. And I think this Eagles team is maybe a little bit better equipped than they were 2 years ago to really possess the ball and really kind of like control just the pace of the game, which I think is a huge thing of like not let drives, not let just possessions by the Chiefs sort of get away from them in terms of like the Chiefs sort of having this, because that's more what the Chiefs are built on now too, is like you said, sort of like these shorter passes, really decisive, change of direction, change of motion, and like marching the ball down the field. It's like, how much can the Eagles sort of match that? I think it's a lot to a degree that we were talking about going into the Commanders game too, of like, look, it's pretty impressive, how effective Jaden Daniels and the Commanders had been, but like, what can the Eagles offense do to match that? And I think a big thing too is just setting the tone early, like being effective in that first drive on offense, and like how they kind of control Mahomes in the offense in the first half, or in the first quarter, excuse me.
Yeah, no, that's you bring up great points. The time of possession is going to be like, if you control the clock, like, fewer possessions for Mahomes and the offense. That's definitely a great point. Yeah, I mean, if they can run the ball effectively and kind of wear out this defense, and then the second half is normally when Saquon kind of pops off. And I mean, he might do it in the first half anyway, but the second half, it's like he averages, I think it's almost 3 more like yards than the first half was. So, like, just wearing the Chiefs out, and especially the defense kind of slowing them down, like that would definitely go a long way in determining really who wins this game and if it's even close at all in the end. But um, you're right that this team is better equipped to do that, and kind of that's what they've been doing all season, just kind of grinding it out. And um, I don't really see like this offensive line is just really good. As good as Chris Jones is, as good as Karlaftis is, I just think this offensive line is better than all of them across that front four. So they've been so good all season. It's just I don't see what would change. Maybe the injuries slightly hamper them, but they fully practiced Landon Dickerson and Cam Jurgens. But
Yeah.
yeah, I just think they've been bullying defensive lines all season. Saquon had the Ravens hadn't allowed an 100-yard rusher going into that game. I think it was week 12 against the Ravens, and then Saquon went and did that. Went rushed for over 100. The Packers were one of the best in the playoffs. Saquon ran for over 100. So
Yeah.
it's just the offensive line is a huge part of it too. It's just they've been so dominant as well this whole season. So yeah,
Yeah.
all those things going together, it's gonna take a lot. It's gonna take everything, your best game of the season, and maybe a little luck on your side because I feel like every team needs a little bit of that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, man. I know that you had a lot of other stuff that you wanted to dive into in terms of like stats and like I don't know, I just guess kind of other storylines as well. I guess one last thing I'll say, just kind of looking at the offense a little bit, is like we've talked a lot about Saquon Barkley and how big of a factor he's going to be. I brought up with the Chiefs, man, that like they've got this confidence that they're going to win, been there, done that. I'm really excited to see like when those pressure moments come up and the team needs a big play and they can't necessarily rely on a running play, like how Jalen Hurts potentially steps up. Because I really feel like we saw vintage Jalen Hurts in this conference championship game against the Commanders, and I'm excited to see if that comes out again in this game. And if he's needed to be a factor, just they've leaned so heavily into this run game and this run attack that I think people have like forgotten how great and how effective Jalen Hurts can be. And I'm excited to see like if that moment comes down, like do or die, or there's a drive that needs to be had with under 2 minutes in the game. Like, does he go out and get it done for this team? That's something I'm really excited to say.
Yeah, I just one thing on that before we move on to the stats stuff. Just think about the 35-27 situation. The Chiefs went and scored in that last Super Bowl, and I mean, I was sitting there really nervous, but Jalen Hurts just said he just took it all the way himself. That deep ball to Devontae Smith, then he ran it in, had the 2-point conversion too. So that to me showed in that moment, and I still believe in him that he can deliver. And when it comes down to that, if it's a game tying or game winning situation, I think he can do it. I believe in him.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, moving on to like the sort of stats and nerdy things that I was looking at. So there have been only three instances where quarterbacks have faced off twice in the Super Bowl. Just to name them: Roger Staubach versus Terry Bradshaw, Troy Aikman versus Jim Kelly, Eli Manning versus Tom Brady. And the quarterbacks who won the first of those games have also won the second. So that being Bradshaw, Aikman, and Manning. All three of them pretty much swept. They went 2-0 against the same quarterback. There have been 9 Super Bowl rematches, 4 not including this one. And 4 of them, have happened in a 5-year span. So the team that won the first Super Bowl also won the second, those being the Giants, which was 2007, 2011, Steelers and Cowboys in 1975 and 78.
Yeah.
Those Cowboys back-to-back years, the Chiefs and Niners 2019 and 2023. So obviously those teams went 2-0 as well. So a bit of history that goes against the Eagles.
Yeah.
And then there have been 8 teams that have had a chance at a three-peat. Obviously, none of them have made it this far back to the Super Bowl. The Chiefs are the only team that have done so, but none of them.
Which is kind of crazy in and of
Yeah,
itself.
all 3 of them made to the conference championship. but that's as far as they went. But yeah, that's how close they got to it. But yeah, this is maybe some history against the Chiefs that goes against their favor.
Yeah.
And then quarterbacks, this one could be huge. Quarterbacks are 3-11 when facing the number one ranked defense in the Super Bowl. So the Eagles obviously have the number one defense, and that's something that also kind of works in their favor that they have this defense, and hopefully that kind of goes on their side too. But yeah, man, those just there's something's got to give. Like I said about the conference championship, when it was Jaden Daniels, no rookie had ever won, and then Jalen Hurts, how no quarterback had ever returned to the Super Bowl after, losing the first start in the Super Bowl. So he ended that streak. So I there's a part of me after saying that believes that this streak or this history that is going against the Eagles could be snapped.
Yeah.
Man, I love looking into all this, even though it makes me even more nervous. But
Yeah.
I don't know if you have any thoughts on any of that.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, a lot of it kind of goes back and forth. I mean, it was interesting. You brought up the one previewing the Commanders game that like no quarterback that lost their first Super Bowl had ever gotten back there. And this Eagles team bucked that trend with Jalen Hurts getting to his second Super Bowl in 3 years. And I think the one that stands out to me as the most interesting is just that fact of like, the teams when they faced each other twice. I think it was 4 of them have won the second time, which is interesting that these teams play again. But then at the same time, there's never been a three-peat. So I think it's like the close proximity that these teams are playing again is kind of unique in that sense. Like when the Bills and Cowboys played, it was back-to-back years. When the Steelers and Cowboys played, it was also a very similar close timeline. But then on the flip side, when it was the Giants and the Patriots, it was a little bit more spread out, a little bit more of an expanded timeline. So it's interesting how all that works. I have an X factor that we didn't really talk about that I also wanted to bring up to you that I think is just interesting previewing this game that I thought about, kind of going through my thoughts and notes for this episode. But I think something that no one's really talked about that I think is a huge factor is the kicking game in this thing, man. I mean, Harrison Butker, one of the best kickers in the NFL over the last, pretty much since he came into the league. He's been hurt a lot this season, but got back healthy specifically to be in these big spots in these big time games versus Jake Elliott, who, missed a field goal. Granted, it was from like 54 yards in the conference championship game and, has had kind of one of the down years of his career, man. If this game comes down to being a one-score possession, comes down to the final drive, like it could come down to which kicker has the ball on his foot to end the game, man. And it could be a really big factor. I mean, let alone, if you really need to take advantage of every possession, you're on your opponent's side of the field and one of these guys is making those field goals and one of them is missing it, could be a really, really huge factor if each and every point becomes vital in this game.
Yeah, that is a huge point. And there's a part of me that's like, I don't think Jake Elliott's going to see the field very much because I think, knowing the Eagles and how aggressive they are on 4th and short, they're going to go for it and try. And that's the other thing that kind of extends drives and keeps Mahomes off the field. I feel they're going to kind of lean towards that unless they 1,000,000% have to kick a field goal, which nowadays, I don't know. It seems so unlikely, but especially on the plus side of the field. But that is a very good point. I just kind of hope that, like, I might not trust Jake Elliott right now, and I just hope this offense does enough to where we don't have to get to that situation. Unless, like I said, it's a must. You have to kick the field goal. And hopefully that's in like a game winning situation and not like a game tying, because I would not want to watch that because that would freak me out. That would kill me. But you're right, though. That's a great point.
Yeah, it's definitely part of what I think is going to be a factor, and it's just going to be interesting to see how it plays out, man. But I don't really have much more to add. I think the last thing we need to kind of do here is just make some predictions for the game. Unless there's anything you want to add, I'm happy to go first and give you the final word.
No, you go first. I want to hear what you have to say.
All right, man. So I mean, I was asked for a prediction at work on Monday in my Monday morning meeting. We went around my team and everybody had a prediction. I'm going to stick with the same prediction I gave them. I think that this is going to be an incredibly close game. I do think that the Eagles are a massively talented team. I think the talent on their defense, their ability to run the football is going to be a huge factor. But I think that just the been there, done that factor I continue to bring up for the Chiefs is going to be just a back and forth affair, a real nail biter. And I can't see anything being more of a nail biter than a 1-point game, let alone a 1-possession game. So I'm going to have winning 32-31, the Philadelphia Eagles.
That is not at all what I thought. I thought you were going to say the Chiefs. Oh my God. I was like, okay, fine, pick against the Eagles. That's fine. I was.
I'm going Philly, man. Even though you're wearing your Chiefs green today, I'm going with Philly. Or your Chiefs red, I'm going with Philly.
I was like, nah, Red Fox as always. No, you didn't have to say. I'm going to take my shirt off now. Oh God. I'm so torn, man. I've gone back and forth for days now about this, and I'm so stuck, man. I'm gonna do the ultimate reverse jinx and hope that, because the first time, I'm pretty sure 2 years ago, I said the Eagles would win, if I'm not mistaken. I'd have to go back and look. But
yeah, I don't remember off the top of my head.
I feel like I said the Chiefs would win, the Eagles would win, and then they didn't. So I might just go, if that was the case, which it might not have been, but I'm gonna go against that and counter it and say the Chiefs are gonna win 27-24. But that's the ultimate reverse jinx. That's like the biggest reverse jinx I could ever do in this moment in the Super Bowl. But I don't know. I think this Eagles team is good enough to beat them. It's gonna take the best game of everyone's lives. And I'm sure they're capable of it, but I want the reverse jinx. Just I don't know. I'd rather be proven wrong than well, I guess I could be proven right also, but I don't know. In the sense of, like, I don't fully believe the Chiefs can win, but I also don't fully believe the Eagles can win, if that makes sense. It's just such conflicting feelings. I could really see it going either way, but
yeah.
God, I can't. I don't know. I'm so torn, man. still torn on it.
So are you going? You're going with the Chiefs for the reverse jinx factor?
Yes, that is what I'm doing. That's okay. 27-24.
Okay, there we go. On record. All right, man. It's now just a waiting game for us to get to get to that point. The excitement that comes along with it, man. It's only a couple days away, and I'm pretty stoked for it. I know you're nervous as hell for it, but I don't know. Try to enjoy it as much as you can, man. I mean, I guess the one other stat we'll say is, in the one game we watched these teams play each other in the Super Bowl, we were together and the Eagles lost. We're not going to be together for this game. Yeah. So can the Eagles, is that going to be a jinx that turns it the other way? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But any final thoughts, man, as we wrap this up?
Go Birds, man. Go Birds.
Go Birds, man. We'll see what happens. And, we'll be back to hopefully break down a Philadelphia Eagles win. But it's going to be a tense couple days. Ricardo's already sweating over there, man. I won't make you put it through it anymore, but we'll be back soon. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.